Hey guys, Kay here, and this is Lost Between Analog and Digital, an unscripted, angsty millennial podcast about growing up in the 90s and 2000s, as well as whatever other topics I feel like covering. So today I wanted to talk about one of my favorite game series growing up. Now, I was really tempted to start with Final Fantasy VII or my other longtime favorite, Suikoden or Suikoden, however it's pronounced. I'm dyslexic and terrible at remembering it. I decided for the first one, I wanted to talk about Metal Gear Solid. The game I always found fascinating, like the whole franchise. So the first Metal Gear Solid, I believe, was actually came out in '87. That was made by Hideo Kojima. I believe I'm saying that right. My apologies if I'm not. It had a sequel. It had a sequel that wasn't produced by Kojima. Then later, it got its first true sequel as Metal Gear 2: Solid Snake. I think that was like maybe '92. I wouldn't have played any of those games at release. I don't even know if they were available in North America at the time until they were repackaged with, I think, Metal Gear Solid 3, or maybe that was the PlayStation 3 High Def Collection. So my first Metal Gear game would have been Metal Gear Solid, which came out in North America in '98 or '99. And I probably would have played it around maybe 2000. When we got our PlayStation, it actually came with a demo disc that had the first part of Metal Gear Solid on it. So it was the swim in, and then like the first warehouse where you have to get past some guards to the elevator, and then was like a trailer for the game. And I was absolutely obsessed with that. I don't know how many times I've played that demo. I don't think either of the two movie like rental places in town had Metal Gear Solid available, but I end up getting a copy from my uncle for Christmas one year. So I think that was 2000, and I absolutely love Metal Gear Solid. I might actually still have the game somewhere with my original PlayStation if my little brother didn't steal the game to sell it, like most of my retro games. The Metal Gear franchise as a whole is this like just beautiful mashup of all of these like action B movies and like just pop culture references mixed with like heaping tablespoons of David Bowie influence and a legally distinct version of the theme from Speed. Like it's just this on paper. It looks like it should just be an absolute mess that doesn't work. It should be a parody of a parody or something. But Kojima, he just weaves it into this coherent narrative that somehow feels grounded and emotional, but at the same time anything can happen. Like it is a very serious next to real world setting with what should be real people based on like hard historical military like action, and then 10 seconds later you're fighting a cyborg ninja and trying to stop a giant bipedal mech from launching a nuke. But it feels coherent, it feels believable in that world, and the story has actual emotional depth if you let yourself get into the story and get attached to these characters. There is weight, there is pain, there is drama, there is like real emotions that none of these characters are truly heroic. They're all broken and flawed. And I think that's a big part of it is that most action movies and everything, that the hero's heroic, the bad guys are, evil. There's this dichotomy, but like some of the older action movies like Rambo, where it had this kind of dragged back in against his will, and this, I think the first Rambo was kind of more like a PTSD where he goes off in the woods and where he's trying to escape and everything. The character of Solid Snake is this ex special forces soldier that is pulled back in after serving his time, after trying to get out, told he has to do this one last mission for then to realize that there's so much more going on, that it's not just one mission, and he has a responsibility beyond what he initially thought. And then you have all the time paradox stuff where it goes back in time and you deal with different aspects of the franchise, like Big Boss, and that. So obviously, there's no real way for me to talk about this if you're not familiar with the Metal Gear Solid story without spoiling anything, and I do apologize for that. But yeah, like it's just um, everything in the Metal Gear Solid universe is somehow like stolen from something else, yet original in its own aspect. Like the character of Solid Snake, the main protagonist of most of the games, or his father, Big Boss, who he's a genetic clone of. If I'm remembering right, Solid Snake is the dominant traits of Big Boss, and then he has a brother which had the recessive traits. But yeah, the character's based on Snake Plissken, Kurt Russell's character from Escape from New York, but also simultaneously smashed into like Halloween Jack, the David Bowie persona. There's this, the teased out hair, the eye patch for Big Boss. I think it's bandanas from a movie called Deer Hunter, maybe. Not 100% sure. Just for some reason that just popped into my head talking when thinking about the character. Now, Big Boss has more of a, especially older Big Boss has more of a kind of Sean Connery vibe, where younger Big Boss kind of has more of a Kurt Russell, David Bowie kind of vibe. And we're Halloween Jack and Kurt Russell's character in Escape from New York both have an eye patch. Uh, both Solid Snake and Big Boss, or Naked Snake as he's known prior to the code name Big Boss, both have kind of a teased out hair bandana. Big Boss has the eye patch later on, and yeah, he just like it's just one of the first times where there's like kind of the first visible David Bowie reference. The other clone of Big Boss, Liquid Snake, has more of a like a thin white duke feel, where he's British. He has like kind of an aristocracy feel to him. He's like old military family kind of vibes. He's a little bit more pompous. And he's a lot whinier. Or maybe I'm just thinking the parody videos. He's not the type of character like looking at Big Boss or Big Boss and Solid Snake. You see the similarities, but Liquid Snake and Solid Snake, you don't really notice the similarities until it's revealed later in the story. And then like the main protagonist from Metal Gear Solid 2, Raiden, he's very David Bowie influenced. Very like the character's a little bit more effeminate than Solid Snake. He's longer, teased out hair. It's like almost everything feel is some kind of David Bowie reference. In Metal Gear Solid 3, the character Major Zero briefly uses the name Major Tom, which was a David Bowie character, or the David Bowie song from Ashes to Ashes in Space Oddity. Other characters in Metal Gear Solid 3 have David Bowie esque kind of vibe to them. It's like an action hero or action character kind of smashed into David Bowie. Ocelot's one that has kind of a little bit of a David Bowie feel. He has a bit of a thin white duke feel going on. Might be one of or some of the other personas like the DJ, or terrible at remembering the names. Not Aladdin Sane. Um, yeah. So it's not that important really, but you could look it up. Or you can look it up, and there's all kinds of articles, and you could probably write a whole like encyclopedia series on all of the references that Kojima uses in the Metal Gear Solid games alone. In Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, the principal, like the primary group that you belong to is called Diamond Dogs, which is a David Bowie album. You find out that Big Boss has the code name of The Man Who Sold the World, which is a David Bowie song. And they play a really good cover of The Man Who Sold the World at the end there, or at some point in it when that reveal is made. where that's a bit of a newer game. Well, not that new, but like in the last 15 years or so, and a really good game that's worth playing, even though it was never technically finished. I don't want to spoil too much about the big reveal in Metal Gear Solid 5, especially because when I picked up the game, I was at Best Buy buying it like the second week it was out, maybe. I can't remember if I just couldn't get a physical copy at the time, or if maybe I was just waiting till payday or whatever. But the guy literally scanned my game, was like, "Hey, I can't believe insert big plot reveal at the end of the game." And I'm like, "F you." Like, thanks numbnuts for like ruining the entire game for me. I'm not one to like lose my cool on people in a retail setting. I get it, they're doing their job. I've worked retail myself and everything. But when I just told this guy off and I'm like, "Thanks numbnuts." Um One of the employees that works there is a friend of mine. He walks over and he's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "Squirrel here just, ruined, the $79 game I'm buying." So I end up getting it for like 25% off at least. Yeah, I remember my buddy standing there and he's like trying to be an adult and trying to be a manager, and he's like, "Yeah, like, okay, our guy's in the wrong. He shouldn't be telling people buying the game about the plot point that came out." But it's like, come on, man, like, can you not insult my employees? And I literally called him squirrel and the poor cashier that's waiting on me is kind of like, he doesn't know what to say. But it's just like, oh, I could tell like the cashier just wanted to like strangle me. But like, come on, like when something's been on the market or been out for less than a month, like don't spoil shit for people. If it was out for 6 months, or if I was picking it up like 2 years after it came out and I never played it before, I'd probably still be like, oh, that sucks. Thanks a lot. But I wouldn't be like gonna fight him in the parking lot. I've always loved the Metal Gear series. There was just something that always felt so familiar yet fresh and different, and it's a little formulaic that like this happens, this happens, this happens. You go back in the past and there's a character A, character B, character C kind of thing, but then you jump to the future and they're either, a descendant or an archetype of this type of character. So there's this familiarity through it all. I've played almost all of the mainline series except for Portable Ops. I I have Portable Ops. Like I purchased it, but it was around the time they shut down the Sony store. Um, well, I had purchased before, but my PSP battery like swelled and wouldn't work. And then I bought another PSP off eBay that didn't work, and kind of forgot about it until they were shutting down the PSP store. So I tried to get another one off eBay, and that one came with a battery that wouldn't hold a charge. And basically, a replacement battery cost what I paid for it on eBay. So because it said the battery was good and everything, I contacted the seller on eBay and tried to get like a partial refund just to cover the cost of buying a new battery off Amazon. And they end up basically ignoring me. So that timed out, and I went to I contacted eBay, and eBay was like, okay, they're not getting in touch with you. They don't want to resolve it. We'll give you a full refund. And then they decided to start calling my phone at about 2 or 3 in the morning, and because I'm from like Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia, and my last name is an MC name, they would talk with a fake Irish accent and keep calling my phone in the middle of the night and calling me a McLobster. So real mature. Um, but They were from Alberta, and the phone number that was coming up was from Alberta. When the only people that from Alberta that I've had communication with or anything recently was from eBay. So I contacted eBay customer support, and the number I gave them ended up being tied to that account. So they end up getting their eBay account deleted. Over literally, I asked for like $10-15 off the $45 PSP I bought because it said the battery was fine and the charger was fine, but the charger was had cracked plastic and the battery wouldn't hold the charge. So by the time I got all that mess sorted out, the PlayStation PSP store was closed, and I couldn't get my copy of Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops Plus, unfortunately. And I could have probably put it on my PS3, but my PS3 fell off the shelf it was on and hasn't really been working properly, so I didn't really want to go through the hassle of fighting with that. And the cost of a PSP or PS3 at the time was still high enough that it wasn't worth the hassle of buying a refurbished one and or sorting that stuff out. But yeah, so I've played all the mainline games except for Portable Ops, and each game has like different gameplay. So every game kind of feels fresh but familiar. Um, there's always something kind of new or innovative that they bring into each one. Like the first Metal Gear Solid game on the PlayStation was one of the first games that really had like good controls for a 3D game, that it didn't feel like tank controls where you stop and you pivot in a direction and that. I mean, I could pick it up now and be like, "Oh my god, these controls are horrible," and they are tank controls. But I remember the controls feeling a lot more fluid. Um, it's the one of the first games that I played that was fully voice acted. The cutscenes were very cinematic. A lot of things are like references to movies or inspired by different scenes. The music was really good. Like I said previous, that the main theme to me feels like a legally distinct version of the theme from the movie Speed, except it's a little busier, but it's really good at building tension, and it really works for the franchise. It has that kind of it feels dangerous, it feels tense, it feels like something's going to kick off at any moment. Like all the weapon designs and everything were based off of real world weapons or a fictionalized version of a real world weapon. At least a lot of the games I played had like just weird science fiction guns or whatever. So it felt a lot more grounded and a lot more real world, despite the fact that half the enemies you're fighting have borderline superpowers. And then there was like just novel things that were in it, like in the one of the final boss fights with Psycho Mantis. He can read your mind, so what you have to do is unplug your controller from port 1 and plug it into port 2, so he can't read your mind and control you, which is kind of a cool little aspect. Like it really worked with the physical system and everything, and made it feel like you had, like you were really combating this psychic character that could control your moves. The second game, you get to play a Solid Snake for a little bit, but the main character is Raiden. That's a character that's trained off of Solid Snake's time in Shadow Moses, which was the first game. And it's so you go through this thing where it's like a simulation of um, the events feel like it's almost like a simulation of Shadow Moses, but it's in the Big Shaw, which is this like oil platform on the Atlantic coast. So you go through this whole it's another good game that I think they put out in the anniversary collection or something recently. So I don't want to ruin too much of that as well. But such a good game. It has some unique aspects. I think they introduced the tranquilizer gun, so you don't have to kill enemies. So you have like non-lethal means. So yeah, you have like non-lethal means for the first time. It had slightly where you're playing as a different character, it has slightly different feel, slightly different gameplay because it's not Solid Snake, it's someone different. And then, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, you go back to the 1960s and you play as Naked Snake or Big Boss. So it's one of his first solo missions. That sets up a number of characters that have, roles and effects throughout the entire Metal Gear, franchise going forward. So it's like, it does a lot of world building and a lot of backstory. And they just put out Metal Gear Solid 4 or 3 Snake Eater Delta. So again, I don't want to ruin too much for anybody that hasn't played that yet. And I haven't played Snake Eater Delta myself yet. I'm kind of on the fence about playing it because where Kojima left Konami over Metal Gear Solid 5, I'm a little apprehensive because basically anytime Konami touches Metal Gear Solid without Kojima's involvement, they're terrible games. That game, Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, at least in the original and the PlayStation 3 remaster, they had a cool medical system where if you got shot, you would have to like go into the medical viewer and you would equip the knife and you would pull the bullet out and then you would bandage yourself with bandages and to just stop the bleeding. Otherwise, like your health would tick down. If you ate something that was poisonous, like expired rations, or you could trap animals for rations. If you ate something poisonous, you could spin the character around in the viewer and make him throw up. So that added a different layer because in like Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 Sons of Liberty, you had nanomachines in you that like stopped your injuries until you would heal with a ration or something. So in the 1960s, you don't have the same science fiction answer. Then Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriot um, takes place in the like slightly distant future. Snake is an old man now. As a clone, he's been suffering from accelerated aging. So he has this like muscle suit just to get him through this last mission. And it has the this like camouflage ability where you can press up against a surface or the ground or something, and you will blend in. So you have a high reliance on camouflage, kind of like Sneak Eater had a similar thing as well, where you'd find camouflage outfits and you'd change them to your environment, and it would make you harder to spot. But in Metal Gear Solid 4, um, it was a big part of it, and like where you had this adaptive suit and everything that it made it so much easier to kind of hide, or if you ran into a new area and you had like a gravel pattern and then you're into more brick, you're going to stand out more. So it made you more conscious of your environments. And on the PS3 and everything, that the environments were really well detailed for the time. So it really kind of added to the appreciation of that. Um, so yeah, like every game kind of to some degree would reinvent itself while keeping the same familiarity and everything that it that the other games would have. Metal Gear Solid 4 was a a great game because it really continued and finished Snake's story and tied up stories from some of the people from Metal Gear Solid 1 that were absent from Metal Gear Solid 2 and obviously like not born for Metal Gear Solid 3, or some of them were. It also had moments too, like you go back to Shadow Moses Island for one of the missions, and you have a chance to pilot the Metal Gear Rex, which was like just this kind of cool moment. And then there's a bunch of references to it, like when you're going through one of the transitional areas, they radio you to tell you have to change the disc out to be like, oh no, wait, I'm mistaken. We're on Blu-ray now, kind of thing. So just little like jokes at the original game, the limitations of the game and how much they've come along, and just if you're a nerd for that kind of stuff, like it was just it's not something that feels out of place in Metal Gear games because they would just have random conversations about pretty much anything. I didn't play Portable Ops, which would be one of the next mainline games that was out, but my recollection of it is Naked Snake goes back to the U.S. in the '60s and joins up with Colonel Roy Campbell, and they build like the prototype unit of Foxhound or whatever the military unit that Solid Snake belonged to. And so that had to do with like recruiting characters. Like you would encounter enemies and be able to like knock them out and recruit them. I think you took them to a truck or something. Or like a designated point where they could be recovered. I don't. I'm not 100% sure because I never had the chance to play it. I'm just thinking back to. I'm just thinking back to either some videos I've seen or whatever years ago. But so that had another element of kind of like building your team or whatever, and then that was expanded on for the next game in the series, Peace Walker, which was also on the PlayStation Portable. So Big Boss, who going by I think Naked Snake again at this time, disillusioned with the U.S. and politics and everything, leaves for Central America and starts a private military corporation for the soldiers that have been left behind. Militaire Sans Frontiere, MSF, which they I think got in trouble from Doctors Without Borders. They have the same initials, and basically it was basically a pun. Soldiers Without Borders was a Militaire Sans Frontiere was a pun on the Doctors Without Borders. And so I think there might have been some legal action or something, but I know they had a disclaimer that said Militaire Sans Frontiere is not associated with Medics Without Borders or Doctors Without Borders. You end up getting recruited um, to make contact with these rebels in, I think it's Costa Rica, I believe they're from Nicaragua, that get forced across the border and assist them. So you go through all these missions and everything, and in exchange for doing it, you're given an offshore, a former oil platform or something in the Caribbean Ocean, and that becomes Mother Base. And then all the soldiers you recruit, and like equipment and everything that is, you get to the point where you have these boss battles with like an armored personnel carrier or a Hind helicopter and whatever. So there's ways you can take them down without destroying them. So you're able to salvage this equipment and everything, and then you build Mother Base. And as you assign people to these teams, it'll like unlock new weapons, or you can get better supply drops or like R&D. So you would have access to more equipment. Combat team would I think you could send more soldiers out to do missions, which would unlock like points and rewards and stuff for other stuff. So there was the whole mechanic around that. So yeah, it was like every game kind of had its own unique feel, unique add-on. That and then like Metal Gear Solid 5 is the pinnacle of the like Peace Walker. There was Ground Zero, which was like the prequel chapter. Like I don't want to spoil these games because if you haven't played them, they have amazing story. But it's at one location at the U.S. military base in Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, or the in game version of it. You go in and you're trying to rescue an operative that's been captured. So you're going through that, and there's options to be able to like you can extract soldiers and everything, and they will carry over. And then when you do that, just one main mission, there's about maybe a dozen other missions on the same map where um, one of them, for example, is I think it's the Eye and the Finger. They're a sniper team from Vietnam that the Vietnamese government wants dead, but you have the option to you can kill them or you can extract them. But that was just broken off from Metal Gear Solid 5 because of the ballooning costs of all that. So Metal Gear Solid 5's put out to be the set in the I think mid '80s or so, and it's meant to kind of be the prequel to all the other Metal Gear Solid games going forward. Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake, Metal Gear Solid. So you spend the whole map uncovering like the whole conspiracy, everything that's going on, building up the Diamond Dogs. You go through all this stuff, and it ends with this big like turning point where when you think everything's kind of wrapped up, something escalates, and you're supposed to be able to take all the diamond dogs that you collected and then go and fight this last objective. And it was all planned out and everything, but they ran out of money. Basically, Kojima wanted more dump trucks of flaming money to throw at the game, and Konami said, "No, you've been developing this for however many years. Put it out now." I'm not sure quite the full story, but it was bad enough that Kojima basically left Konami before the game was finished, went and started his own production company, and Konami put the game out unfinished and then never put out another chapter or downloadable content or anything to sum up the end part of the game. Instead, a couple years later, they reused all the assets and put out one of the worst Metal Gear games ever, Metal Gear Survive. And it was like everything that was wrong with video games at the time. There was microtransactions. It was it was live service, like online only, despite the fact that it was more or less a single player. It was just basically like everything that gamers didn't want. They wrapped up in one package, put a Metal Gear Solid bow on it, and wondered why it flopped. I'm still disappointed, like years later, that Metal Gear Solid 5 was never finished, that there's no satisfying conclusion. The team did kind of release like what the ending was supposed to be, that you and the Diamond Dogs go and fight this last threat. And then I think it reveals more about like the big twist at the end. But yeah, we never got that. Which I don't know why, with the game being popular, they didn't put out like having a completed engine, having the majority of the assets and everything built. Put out a part two that was the end piece, like the way they broke off Ground Zero from Metal Gear Solid 4 or Metal Gear Solid 5. If they put that out as a standalone content or DLC, even if they charged like another $70 for it, it would have pissed fans off less than Metal Gear Survive. But yeah, no, like the Metal Gear franchise, for seriously what on paper is just a bunch of recycled B movie plots and David Bowie inspired characters, like has done amazingly well and has such a loyal fan base. To this day, I'm still a huge fan, and I'm absolutely heartbroken that Kojima left and is never going to work on anything unless Konami pulls its head out of its ass and apologizes and maybe contracts his studio to work on one. But yeah, like I love Kojima's work. He went on to make Death Stranding and Death Stranding 2, which I haven't played 2 yet, and only because I haven't finished 1 that came out kind of just before COVID. I got really into it for a while, but it's a heavy game, and I was working at a pet store, and they decided we're essential workers. So I went from like 25 hours a week to 45 to 60 hours a week throughout COVID. So yeah, I didn't get that much time for it, and just being absolutely burned out from that to sit down and play a game that has some pretty heavy themes, and for the most part it's pretty chill, but then you have some kind of heavy moments. I put it down and never got back to it. I should throw that on my to play next list. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm kind of curious what you guys think of the Metal Gear Solid series. If you've played it before, if you agree with my assessment that basically everything is just recycled from action movies and David Bowie personas, but like in the best possible way. And yeah, so thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed the podcast, the best way you can support us is to tell a friend, as well as leave a review. And I'll see you guys in the next one.